I'm Kate Garrison. I am an Enneagram coach. And today we're going to be talking about boundaries and the Enneagram. I teach these two subjects to help servant leaders create impactful cultures that no one wants to leave. And we do this by holding 9 different lenses of reality to see which one brings clarity to their motivations and patterns. And we start with 3 different responses to stress to identify their boundaries. And I have a story of when my boundaries were tested, but first let's learn what the 3 different boundary types are. The first one is concerned with one's own physical body and comfort. Just think of a turtle who has a shell to protect itself. And we call this boundary type or subtype self-preservation, but we're going to shorten self-preservation subtype to be SP. Okay, the second boundary is more about one person defending another person. And in here, the way they alleviate stress is to have affection and intimacy between the two. So we're going to imagine 2 lovebirds that mate for life. And this subtype is called the 1-to-1, which we will shorten to look like that. Our last boundary expands to a bigger group of people. And in this case, one's identity and belonging really help them deal with stress. So in the animal kingdom, the zebras are in a tribe to survive. And this is called the social subtype. We'll represent the social subtype or boundary type with the letter S. So we've got in the middle here, self-preservation, and the outside circle, 1-to-1. And the last one, social, involving a lot. Wondering if you have ever had a problem with a difficult neighbor. Well, I did. And it happened one day when I decided to do a Christmas party for all the neighbors. And I identify as a social subtype. And we were going to do a sing-along as well as just be able to go from person to person and know them better. And one of my neighbors that came over identified as a self-preservation. And her name, I will call, is Rachel. And as she was going around the room, I started to notice some inappropriate behavior that was putting my guests in danger. So I confronted her about the situation, and she became very defensive and rigid. And I just didn't understand why she wasn't concerned with the well-being of my guests. In essence, I didn't understand why she couldn't be a zebra. On top of that, I learned that our subtypes, boundary types, are created when we're 0 to 1 years old. So changing each other was going to be impossible. So coming to this impasse, I actually was able to let it go and remain peaceful. However, Rachel and I will probably not be getting together for any sing-alongs. Now, it doesn't always have to be where you don't resolve your situation. For example, I have another neighbor, and I will call her Jenny, who fully planned on going to a music concert I was doing, and it was for a fundraiser. Kenya kids were in dire need of food and schooling. And so I put together this singing program, and when I told her about one of the songs I was doing, the message just was disturbing to her. She became very cautious, and she wanted to protect her own beliefs. Now, being the social, I really was passionate about the social cause that was in the song. So we came together one day on my patio, and I started to learn that there was really just one line that was upsetting to her. So I offered, hey, what if I change the one line of music and then I can sing the whole song? And she said, well, that would be wonderful. And so we did that. We made a lot of money for the Kenya kids, and Jenny and I remained friends. Whereas with boundary types, we have 3, also called subtypes. In Enneagram types, we have 9. And each one has its own emotional and thinking patterns and the reason behind them. It is this motivation behind the behavior that separates it from other typing systems like Myers-Briggs and DISC. And ultimately, the why I do what I do is what helped me find my core type. But more about that later. So as you notice, all 9 core types are in a circle. They're all connected together. Whereas if you have Myers-Briggs or DISC, it's going to be more of a square structure. Let's go to the far right corner with the type 1, and we'll work our way clockwise, giving brief descriptions. Type 1 is called the good person. Type 2, the loving person. Type 3, the effective person. 4, the original person. 5, the wise person. 6, the loyal person. 7, the enthusiastic person. 8, the powerful person. And type 9, the peaceful person. Now, are there any of you that have made a self-discovery that changed the course of your life? I had to wait 20 years before experiencing mine. You see, I sought spiritual directors, group Enneagram leaders, Enneagram books, Enneagram international guru, and all of them concluded that I was the enthusiastic person, type 7. The bubbly, energetic personality type. And who wouldn't want to be that, right? The problem was I did not have meaningful relationships. I was not in a career that was giving me a lot of satisfaction. But the missing piece came when I took a class where I got to be certified in the art of typing. That's learning to type people for their Enneagram number. Ginger Lapid-Bogda, PhD, designed the program in her company, The Enneagram in Business. Ginger is also the author of 7 to 8, I think 8 Enneagram bestseller books. And over 30 years, she's observed body language, speech patterns, and characteristics of the Enneagram types, which gave the expertise to answer my forever question, who am I really? Well, when I met with her, she observed a couple things. 1, you don't seem to talk as fast as a type 7. 2, you seem too focused to be a 7. So probably you coped as a 7 to hide your big emotions. So probably you're a social 4. Wow, I think that was within a minute. But I wanted to test it out And so I met with one of her experienced students who did a one-on-one interview, and sure enough, I was a resounding 4. The original person, intuitive, expressive, emotionally sensitive, who longs to deeply connect with themselves and others. I want to make a way for someone, just like Ginger did for me. Having a narrative expert is going to help you find your way home to your core type. Now, online tests are about 60% accurate, whereas when you're going to have a one-on-one interview, there's a better chance of getting the right answer. So how did finding my core type help me? Well, I have deeper relationships, and I found a job that I really love. I'm coaching leaders and teams towards empathy and better communication. I want to show you a type card that I use in my one-on-one interviews. What is it that you get out of this card? What is the overall perception you have? What are images you're drawn to? What are some images that you don't connect with? Now let's look at the back of the card. Are there words here that describe you? Now let's look at the upper rectangle. This is the motivation that drives the behavior, what separates the Enneagram from other typing systems. We just looked at a card that helps find your core type, but we don't want to stay stuck in the core type. And luckily, the Enneagram has a solution for this, and it is found in the arrows. Let's look at an example of the type 9 at the very top. Now notice there is an arrow that's going towards the 9, and there's an arrow going away from the 9. So instead of getting stuck, we're going to get fit with our arrows. So each type has their own arrows. The arrow that goes away is the frustration arrow. So this is going to an area where they feel stressed. Then the arrow that goes towards the number is called integration. And this arrow offers a place of healing. Now the T for transformation. And that's what we do when we go from integration. We can go back to our stressed response and have a healthier choice. Has anyone ever blindsided you by embarrassing you in front of the public? That happened to me. I worked with a client who was in the real estate business, and we met through a networking event. And we met in the morning, and there were other business people around the table. And when it came to my turn, I could not wait to give praise to one of the business women. And as I was singing her praises, I was interrupted by Rhonda. and I was criticized for my comment, and then the businesswoman's practice was also criticized. The real big part for me was being humiliated in public. So I asked, Rhonda, do you mind having a meeting so we can talk? And luckily she said yes. And I want to show you the presentation I gave her as feedback. So Rhonda is a type 7. They're the enthusiastic person. Someone that's optimistic, always on the go, getting a lot done. Very inclusive too. But her behavior was showing more that stress side that we were talking about. The arrow of frustration. And for her, that number is 1. The good person. She was setting some really high standards that other people were supposed to meet. That meant she was becoming critical of others. So it wasn't really helping the situation. So I invited her to come to her arrow of integration. And for her, that is type 5, the wise person. The 5s have no problem spending time alone and slowing it down to gain perspective. So once she did that, she was able to come back and transform her stress response to one that was helpful. She said, Kate, why don't we talk privately the next time that I want to discuss something you said? And she also said, let's find a way that we can support this other businesswoman together. So now she's the principled, responsible person that the one can be. Furthermore, in her workplace, if she finds herself becoming critical of others, she knows to go in her office to spend time alone to gain perspective. So now, Rhonda has a playbook to become unstuck. Rhonda is truly a servant leader. By Rhonda using her arrow of frustration, or shadow side, she came up with effective decisions to deal with conflict. Forbes magazine said the Enneagram is the combination to unlock long-standing conflict in the workplace. And the playbook is the key. And it all started with Rhonda knowing the characteristics of her stress. So just like you would go to the doctor and you would have a complaint, you could get a proper diagnosis. Whereas you came in with no problem, you probably won't have your health issue resolved. So what would happen if someone did not face their frustration? That is what we will look at next. Did you ever get disappointed by a community leader? I did, with a woman I will call Elaine, a pastor of a prominent church in the Austin area. It was 3 months ago, and I met with her to report some bullying going on in the church choir. And at first, she was concerned and even tapped into sadness, but quickly she changed the storyline and bragged about resolving church choir issues in the past. And then she's ready to move on to the next subject. So why this lack of action to provide safe space for her singers? Well, we're going to find the answer in the playbook. Elaine is a one titled the good person, and they want to be responsible, strive for excellence. She remarked, we have a professional choir. And she tapped into her arrow of frustration for a little while. The 4 is the original person, full of compassion, empathy, and do deal with sadness. Her arrow of integration is the 7, the enthusiastic person who wants to alleviate pain and solve problems in a very creative way. Had she been able to come here, she could have a transformation of the 4 and have enlightened traits of the 4, where she had a deep sense of the truth and the suffering. Also, 4 is where innovation happens. So a whole set of possibilities were lost because she was blind to her shadow side. So by paying attention to your arrow of frustration, it tells you there's a problem under the hood that needs attention and resolution. So when leaders set boundaries, get fit, it equals a healthy culture and safe space. The most recent research on the most successful businesses have one thing in common: safe space for the workplace. As you heard in these stories, understanding each other helped them follow this equation. And when you continue to become more aware of your subtype, of your core type, arrows, shadow side, it's only going to add to the success of your business as well as your life. And I have a friend that did just that. I'd love to hear from some of you about someone that has influenced you so much that it is a big part of who you are today. Well, for me, it was John Chang. We grew up in the same hometown, Marshall, Texas, and went to the same college, Baylor University. And the one thing to know about John, at least to start off with, is he was a supercharged social subtype. He joined a fraternity in college and then joined a group through the fraternity to go country dancing once a week. And I got invited one time, and he taught me how to country dance. And to this day, he was the best dance partner I ever had. When he moved to California, he dreamed about a medical practice that combined urgent care and family care. And it's a business that is thriving today. OC even voted it Premier South Coast Medical Group. When he became a father, he joined the Adventure Guides, a group of fathers that would take their sons camping. At night, the fathers would sit by the campfire and just talk for hours, and John loved this. In California, besides the medical practice, he owned a Kung Fu studio, and he taught women how to defend themselves. Looking out for the needs of others is just what John did. Now, we talked about how he is an energetic entrepreneur, and that is very typical of type 7. And he had great access to his arrow of integration, the 5. The 5 is called the wise person, and he pursued a spiritual practice since his childhood. Then in college, he had that same dedication to inner truth when he signed one of his fraternity brothers' pledge book. It said, "Character is not made in crisis, but exhibited." He was just 20 years old. When he lived in California, this reflection time he would prioritize showed him, I am to be a light in California. Now, later down the line, about 20 years later, John experienced a lot of stress because his business was failing. COVID really hit it hard. So he started going to his arrow of frustration. For him, that is the one who tends to get very critical of themselves. So this sunny, optimistic 7 had a dark night of the soul. However, a friend helped him return to 5 to seek again a renewed purpose to be a light in California. He could then be transformed back to 1 and became a principled community leader. On May 15th, 2022, these traits would be on display. That afternoon, John took his recently widowed mother to her church, a predominantly Taiwanese retired community. She wanted to see her retired pastor that was visiting the church. So they had a luncheon and had probably about 50 people there. And John sat in the back with his mom. A moment of terror happened next because a gunman showed up in the left front side of the room. And within 5 seconds of shooting, John assessed the situation. He ran past tables, took a sharp left, and tackled the gunman. He would be in a struggle with him to disarm him and end up losing his life. As the gunner reloaded, the pastor threw a chair at him, and 3 older members were able to hog tie him till the sheriff came. It was so miraculous because 100 people's lives were saved. That day, love overcame hate. So just being yourself makes you capable of some really powerful things. So my question is, do you want to live with a higher purpose like John, or provide a safe workspace for your employees like Rhonda? I want to help you develop a sustainable environment. And it starts with just being you. Thank you for your time. I am Kate Garrison, founder of Just Be You, Self-Discovery Through the Enneagram. I have a QR code to scan to sign up for a free consultation to share your goals. And I also have another code that you can scan to donate to the Chang family. He left behind a wife and 2 kids. I am now open for discussion.